Consider this a warning. If you ever come across an old photo of your family, one you've never seen before, and there's a building in the background with a flickering sign that reads Lorne Street Theater, look closer. Are they standing near Auditorium 4? Are you sure? 'Cause if they are, something very wrong is about to happen. Something your family has never told you about. And you must leave. Now. Before the next show starts. My name is Anna, and I know some of us were born into this horror. There are nights I still wish someone, anyone, had warned me not to take that job. But even if they had, I doubt I would have listened. Besides, I was desperate. I needed an escape, and this looked like a doorway. A routine gig at an old theater. How bad could it be? So eventually I said yes. What unfolded next still haunts me. Before I begin, let me give you a glimpse into my family dynamic because it explains why I ended up taking that job in the first place. I never really had the luxury of calling anywhere home. My parents were the kind of people who believed emotional distance was a form of discipline. Support was a myth in our house. There was always a lecture, a scoff, or silence, but never a helping hand. So I left. I packed what little I had, scraped together enough for a deposit on a tiny, damp apartment, and started commuting to college from there. The days were long, the nights longer, and I was always hungry. Not just for food, which I often went without, but for stability, warmth, for the faintest hint of a future that didn't feel like a mistake. But dreams don't pay rent, and studying on an empty stomach only made me weaker. I started looking for a job with the same desperation as someone treading water with bricks tied to their feet. The job portals mocked me, the same listings recycled endlessly, irrelevant or already filled. There was one job post, though, oddly persistent. It always hovered at the top no matter what filters I used. Night shift attendant theater on Lorne Street. No experience needed. I dismissed it every time. Felt off. The theater in question had been shut down years ago, or so I thought. But that night, something strange happened. My phone rang. An unknown number. Against my better judgment, I picked up. A low, emotionless voice informed me that I'd been selected for the position. Selected? I hadn't even applied. Your shift starts at 12 a.m. tonight, the voice said before I could ask a single question. My throat tightened. Who even goes to the movies at midnight? But with an empty bank account and nothing in my stomach for the past 2 days, I couldn't afford to hesitate. My fingers trembled as I whispered, "Okay." The theater was only a 15-minute walk from my apartment. It stood at the end of Lorne Street like a corpse no one had buried, an old Art Deco structure with its name carved into the stone, now blackened and worn by time. The neon sign flickered faintly, casting a sickly glow over the entrance. I stepped inside, expecting dust and cobwebs, but what I found was a pristine lobby, brightly lit and humming with electricity. Not a single person in sight. Felt sterile, too perfect, like a set for a film that had no director. A man in a navy blue suit greeted me behind the counter, his skin unusually pale, his eyes hollow. He gave me a red armband and motioned to a small booth near the entrance to the screening halls. "You'll be checking tickets," he said. "Do not leave the booth. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not watch the film." Before I could ask anything, he vanished behind a staff-only door. At exactly midnight, they started arriving. Some of them were in groups, others were alone. Some even crawled in, dragging their limbs like broken mannequins. I don't know what they are. They resemble humans if you squint, tall, unnaturally slender, dressed in black, their skin like melted wax stretched over bones. No eyes, no visible mouths, but they hiss when they breathe. The only sound in the theater besides my own shallow breathing. They carried jars filled with what looked like cloudy water, but upon closer inspection, floated eyeballs stared back at me from inside. The beings sipped from these jars like fine wine. As snacks, they brought chunks of what I first mistook for charcoal. But the smell, they smelled like burnt flesh. Some brought children, smaller versions of themselves with red, sticky mouths and rows of teeth that didn't belong in this world. They feasted on raw meat from paper bags, tearing it apart with an eagerness that turned my stomach. And yet, they all behaved with an eerie civility. They lined up patiently. They held tickets. And they handed them to me. The first time I touched one of them by accident, my hand brushed against the back of a long-fingered hand. A searing pain tore through my skin. I yelped and jerked back, but the being didn't react. Simply continued into the hall, leaving behind a smell like sulfur and ash. I examined my hand, bright red, blistered like I'd pressed it to a hot stove. Never healed. And from that night forward, I couldn't quit. Every time I skipped a shift, I woke up in my bed with the red armband already tied to my wrist, and the burning got much worse. I stopped fighting it. First, I still tried to attend classes. But the more I worked the night shift, the more disconnected I felt from everything else. One day, I just stopped going. It was like the theater became my entire world, and everything outside it faded away. Every night at midnight, I walked into the Lorne Street Theater and stood at the booth as the parade of shadows came through the glass doors. As I lived amongst them as one of them, I learned their habits. Some liked the back row. Others always sat up front. A few carried umbrellas even though it never rained. Once I saw a woman, at least I thought it was a woman, whose head rotated fully around while waiting for that ash like it was a caramel popcorn. Another time, one of them was dragging a man as if he'd be thrown into prison. He didn't seem drugged, just numb. He didn't scream or fight. He walked like he'd accepted his fate. I tried peeking into the theater once. Just once. I figured if I stayed hidden behind the curtains, I could catch a glimpse. But when I looked at the screen, all I saw was black. Deep, infinite black, and a sound, an endless droning hum along with whatever they were watching, wasn't meant for me. My nose started bleeding. I stumbled back and didn't try again. Then I began to notice something else. The old man in the grocery store who used to scowl at everyone? He had the same burn on his hand. I thought it was a coincidence, but then my neighbor's kid, the one who never spoke, wore the same red armband one morning when we crossed paths in the hallway. One night, after another shift at the theater, I came home feeling hollow. I went to wash my face, just trying to feel normal again. But when I looked in the mirror, my skin looked pale, almost gray. I touched my cheek just to be sure it was still me. It didn't feel like me. For the first time, I realized I wasn't just working the night shift. I was changing. And then came the worst discovery of all. I found an old photo album buried in a box my mother had packed for me before I left. In it, a picture of my father standing in front of the Lorne Street Theater wearing the red armband. Another photo, my mother, same place, same armband. My older brother, who I hadn't seen in years, smiling awkwardly at the concession stand. One by one, each member of my family had worked there. None of them had ever spoken about it. I could feel the tears running down over my cheeks. I called my mother for the first time in a while. I didn't expect her to pick up, but she did. I told her about the job, about the burns, about the creatures and the endless film that no one but them could see. I asked her why she never warned me. Why she let me walk into that place. "You were born to be sacrificed," she said. "That's why we had you." And then she hung up. I was shocked. I had no idea what any of it meant. All morning, I'd been disoriented, like waking from a dream I couldn't shake. That night, even though I wasn't supposed to be in the projection room, in fact, I had been explicitly told never to enter it, not by anyone in particular, but by the silence that always surrounded that locked door, by the way it seemed to hum quietly when I passed it, as if there was something alive breathing on the other side. But something was different that night. There was the sound of music. It was mesmerizing, almost leading me to the door. It drifted open without resistance. I stepped inside, not entirely of my own will but guided by that sound, something I couldn't name, something tugging me inward like the pull of gravity at the edge of a dream. I shouldn't have followed, but I did. Instinctively, but my eyes landed on a torn corner of paper peeking out from behind a rusted cabinet, and without even thinking, I bent down and retrieved the envelope. Inside was a photograph, worn, brittle, curling with age and damp at the edges, but what struck me wasn't the condition of the picture, it was the image itself. A woman stood at the center of a dimly lit stage, her body contorted in a way that suggested motion or anguish, or perhaps both at once. Her dress clung to her with the weight of something unnatural, soaked in what looked too dark to be water, and her face. Her face was the kind of thing that brands itself into the part of your brain that never truly sleeps. Her mouth was open in either a scream or a gasp, and her eyes held that eternal, bottomless chaos that you don't find in actors but only in people who've been stripped down to the bones of their suffering. It wasn't performance. It wasn't art. It was exposure, raw, trembling, terrifying exposure. The kind that makes you feel like you're witnessing something cruel. Booty couldn't look away. Without meaning to, I whispered the thought that had just formed, almost afraid that if I said it too loud, something would hear me. "She's the one who'll be in tomorrow's show." And now I couldn't shake the feeling that I had seen something I was never supposed to. Or worse, that the woman in the picture had seen me too. I don't know who she was, but I couldn't stop thinking about her. I was waiting for tomorrow. For the show. I wanted to know her, her story, her past, everything. First glance, the photo looked like a still from an old black-and-white horror film. But the longer I stared, the more alive she became. And the more dead I felt. I got ready and went to the cinema theater. For the first time in a while I was excited. When I arrived for my shift the next day, the lobby was fuller than I had ever seen it. Faces I didn't recognize. They all looked toward Auditorium 4. It wasn't supposed to be on the schedule. It had been closed for maintenance since I started. I'd asked about it once, and the manager gave me a look that shut me up permanently. But now the doors were open. My name wasn't on the usher rotation, yet someone had printed a schedule with my name scratched in next to Theater 4. No one claimed to know who updated it. I was told to go. So I did. I stepped inside just as the lights dimmed and the projector crackled to life. The screen remained black for a long time. The audience leaned forward in their seats. When the first image flickered to life, I felt something shift inside me, like my organs had rearranged. It was her. The woman from the photograph. But this time she moved. First we saw her sitting alone in a dim room, her face half in shadow. Her face looked like a place grief had been living in for years, beautiful once, maybe, but worn thin by memory. There were hollows beneath her cheekbones, not just from hunger, but from holding in screams too long. Her lips were cracked like they hadn't touched water in years. She didn't speak, but you could feel the screaming underneath her silence, as though every cell in her body was trying to escape. Then they came, 4 men and 3 women, stepping into frame like actors in a play written by something cruel and unspeakable. They circled her, dressed in velvet and smoke, their movements sharp, rehearsed, like a ritual masked as art. They hurt her with beauty and rhythm. One draped pearls around her throat, only to pull tight as she gasped out breathless hymns. Another painted symbols across her stomach with a brush dipped in something metallic. Mercury? Blood? It shimmered with every twitch of her skin. They made her dance barefoot on a shattered glass and salt. The camera didn't cut. They hurt her, made her beg to stop. And the worst part? The audience leaned forward with fascination. A soft, collective gasp rippled through the theater, not in horror but wonder. Her parents sat in the front row that night, dressed in their best. The moment the performance began, her sorrow wasn't shown, but it was as if it had been transferred. Here is what I know. Her name was Mary. She had once been a dancer, a girl who loved the stage lights, thinking they made her seen, cherished. Her parents were farmers. She was only 6 when they handed her over to them. They said she was the chosen one. I could see how she held her mother's hand tightly and cried, begging not to be sent away. Everyone told her pain was the price of art, so she finally accepted her fate. No one was sincere with her. But the first betrayal, the one that mattered most, came from her own blood. I could feel her pain when she was trembling, refusing to look. But they forced her chin upward. She saw her own reflection and screamed. Not because of what she saw, but because her reflection didn't match. Smiled when she cried. It blinked when she didn't. It moved independently, mocking her pain. My heart raced frantically as if to catch up with the breath that had fled my body. I couldn't look away. Neither could anyone else. Her pain wasn't acting. Her screams weren't lines. And as I watched, something inside me shattered. When she screamed, the walls backed off. That's when I realized they wanted her to scream. The audience laughed again, louder now. One man even stood up, applauding when she collapsed. Person took her like she was a prop. Then the lights went off, she faded with them. Then I heard them, every voice at once. They were chanting, calling my name over and over. Felt loud like a wave crashing over me, and I wanted to run. My heart raced frantically as if to catch up with the breath that had fled my body. I turned to the audience, who now weren't just watching like audiences, they were participating. They had all come to watch me unravel. To enjoy my suffering like a performance. This wasn't a movie. It was a ritual. My mother wasn't lying. I was born for this. And now it's my turn to show others what suffering really looks like. I let them dress me in blood. I let them film my screams. But every night I watched the audience. Studied who laughed. Who wanted more. I stayed. Everyone thought I gave up, that I accepted my role in the theater. But deep inside I hadn't. First, I cried like they wanted. I screamed on stage. I acted like a victim. People clapped, smiled, whispered things like, "She suffers beautifully." Crowd loved my pain. But something changed inside me. Instead of breaking down, I started watching closely. I began to understand what was really happening here. This wasn't just a movie. It wasn't even a haunted place. It was a ritual, a show that needed real pain to keep going. And I decided I would end it. Each night I went up on stage. I let them film me. I let them see my fear and sadness. But secretly, I was planning something else. I was looking for a way to break the cycle. I studied the projector, the machine that played the movie. One night, I found a small hidden door under the booth. It led to a cold, dark room filled with hundreds of old film reels. These weren't just movies. They were memories of pain. I found a reel showing the woman from the old photo. The first victim. Her face twisted in fear. Her eyes full of pain. She was forced to suffer again and again in this loop. I decided to change it. I sneaked into the projection booth after the show. I took one of the reels and added something new, my voice. I whispered words over the footage. Words the audience would hear without even realizing. Look at yourselves. You are the show now. Then I added flashes of their own faces in the film. While they watched me on screen, the camera was secretly filming them too. Their laughter, their cold smiles, the way they stared at me with hungry eyes now, they were part of it. That night, the screen went dark early. Everyone stared. No one moved. Something had changed. The next night, they seemed nervous. They looked at each other more than the screen. Some laughed, but it felt fake. Others looked sick. When the show ended, one man in a black suit came to me. "You're rewriting it," he said softly. I just nodded. He didn't stop me, 'cause it was already too late. Then came the final night. The theater lights dimmed. The screen flickered. But this time, I didn't wait for the film to start. I walked straight into the light, into the screen, and I came back out on stage. Not as the victim, but as the one in control. I faced the crowd. They were frozen in their seats. I played their whispers back to them. Their laughter. Their cruel comments. I made them hear themselves. One by one, the people in front began to fade. Their faces started to melt into the screen. They were becoming part of the movie. Now they were the ones being watched. Behind the screen, I saw the woman again, the first victim. She stood tall now, her face calm. She looked at me, then stepped into the screen one last time. She was finally free. I turned to the projector. The film stopped. The machine went silent. I walked out of the theater. The door slammed shut behind me. Sighed, I pulled down all the posters. I put up a new one, "Coming soon, your turn." Then I looked at my reflection in the glass. But I didn't see myself anymore. 'Cause I was no longer just a girl forced to suffer. Now I was the one who twisted the ritual. And I made sure the people who came to enjoy pain finally feel it. One of the regulars didn't come back. Crowd was shrinking. Children were not there anymore. The manager noticed. He looked pale and nervous. His hands shook as he handed me the schedule. I smiled and took it anyway. I knew she was watching too, my mother. She stopped calling me. Stopped checking if I was alive. I knew she was scared. She must have felt it, that something had shifted in the ritual. That I wasn't playing my role. That I was changing it. That I was controlling it. I waited until the final night of the month. That was always the biggest ritual. The most people. The longest show. I invited her myself. I left a note under her pillow. No name. Just this. "You took me here once. Now let me take you." And she came. I leaned in close and whispered one last line. "Suffer like you made me suffer." Then I turned and walked away. And all that remained of her was dust on the velvet seat. The reels were gone. Auditorium 4 is locked once again. And I am free. Or maybe not free exactly. But in control. I don't know who I am anymore. My skin doesn't bleed when cut. I stopped eating food. It just tastes like ash. But when the clock strikes midnight, I walk to the theater with my red armband, open the glass doors, and take my place in the booth. And when they come in, those long black figures with their jars of eyes and burning touch, I no longer feel anxious or nervous when doing so. I didn't need revenge anymore. I have something better. But if you ever see a job post for a midnight shift at an old theater with one room under maintenance, don't take it. I know that some of us were born into this horror. Some of us get pulled in. Some of us become part of the ritual. A few survive. And even fewer learn to twist it. To bend the ritual to their will. To rewrite the story from inside the screen. Not to escape, but to change it.